causing trouble today?
Probably.
I didn't call him because I don't see Bill no more.
Hey, man.
I miss Bill.
You get that lens cleaned off for me? All right. Let Buck Owen.
Bill probably don't even go out anymore.
Yeah, he does.
I saw him
He'll be
today.
out.
I ran into him like about a week, a couple weeks.
Well, I guess they'll be on different shifts as well. I haven't seen him.
Yeah.
I miss Vader.
I just found out this week that Cynthia retired.
Yeah, she was,
Did it?
that was like a
I feel
month
like she
ago.
was just in Lipscomb.
Yeah, she was.
Mhm.
Living in Lipscomb.
Basically,
They were so like quiet about it. I figured she'd get like
because
a
it was
big
the last new
send-off.
thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was Cynthia.
Gold.
Gould, I didn't know she was out.
Yeah,
I was wondering when it was gonna come around for her.
she's been talking about it for
I
so
worked
long.
with her briefly at 42.
They took her off, but I don't know from her after. No, no, I don't. I said when she comes in.
No, I actually don't think he doesn't say that. No, I used to pick at her all the time. The fun thing for me was just asking her weird, ambiguous questions that made no sense whatsoever, and just watch her facial reaction.
You ever thought what it'd be like if you ran over the moon and you scream real loud and your neighbors next door would just look at you like you're crazy and start throwing all of at you?
What? That was one of the Cynthia, because she would really kind of like her. She grapple with it. But she was having back trouble or something, wasn't she?
I'm not sure.
She dealt with some kind of health problem. Well, that was probably a year ago.
Like, she were down in front of the federal courthouse. And we need this morning, but, what you mean morning, then Denzel got hired? What happened?
Apparently,
Wait,
from what I
what?
can gather, he got a second speeding ticket in a set amount of time, and it wasn't 13, it's just corporate said,
He got it on company time?
you wanna,
Did he get the ticket on company time?
station.
Well, shoot, don't you have to pay for it though?
Oh, yeah, that's the insult to the injury.
Well, so.
Here's the salt one.
Well, okay, so I got a ticket in Sinclair, speed ticket last year, 'cause I was driving through Sinclair County really fast. I didn't get in trouble for it, I got paid.
Well, this was the second time he had done it, he had the station vehicle. And corporate didn't like it. Hearst is, they're kind of weird.
Gray is really strict. Like you cannot
Oh,
have
I heard.
anything on your record.
I've heard it. Crazy, that 6 feet, not work for it, or else I would.
There was a girl at my old station and she had 2 speeding tickets and they would not let her drive a company car. They made her a weekend anchor and then she had to like produce. And if they sent her anywhere, she had to go somewhere. And they didn't have to go to my old station, so it would have to be like another reporter.
Everybody good?
Yeah.
We ready? Well, good morning. I'm District Attorney Pamela Casey, and I want to start by this press conference by telling you that this prosecution is not about politics or political parties. It's about the rule of law. And whether you vote Republican, Democrat, or Independent in Alabama and the United States, only American citizens are allowed to vote. And the rule of law protects the voice of every lawful voter. When a non-citizen votes, that vote cancels out the voice of a legal American voter. That undermines our public trust and the legitimacy of our elections. And that's why it's important that the public in the state of Alabama know that today I'm announcing the arrest of Frank Maloney, 71 of Trafford, who was taken into custody last night following a Blount County grand jury indictment on 4 counts of felony voter fraud. On January the 12th, Secretary of State Wes Allen announced that he had identified 186 illegally registered non-citizens, including 25 who had voted in Alabama election. And his office released a list of those counties where they had voted, and Blount County was one of those counties. As district attorney of this county, I had a duty to investigate and present this matter to a Blount County grand jury, and we did that. Yesterday, a Blount County grand jury found probable cause that Frank Maloney unlawfully voted in nine state and federal elections despite not being a U.S. citizen, and they returned an indictment of 4 counts of felony fraud. Now, this case involves illegal voting in Alabama by a non-citizen. But also at the time of his arrest, Mr. Maloney was already on bond in an unrelated case from a grand jury in 2025, where he had been charged with 187 counts of child pornography and 4 counts of dissemination of child pornography. Those charges are separate and were in no way connected to the charges of felony voter fraud. Mr. Maloney is now in the court system. He will have his day in court, and he is presumed innocent unless and until he is proven guilty. I have provided you a copy of the public indictment for your use, and I've also provided you, and will make public, the recommendations and findings of the Blount County grand jury. I want to start by thanking that grand jury for their work. They took their duty very seriously. And in addition to the indictment, they unanimously made findings and recommendations which they authorized me to make public and asked that I send copies of their findings to the governor, the lieutenant governor, the attorney general, the secretary of state, the leader of the House and the Senate of our legislature, and the secretary of the Alabama Law Enforcement Agency. Those are as follows, and I'll walk through them with you. They recommend that the Alabama Code be amended to specifically exclude foreign national driver's license as a valid form of identifications for the purposes of voting. Now, last year we saw a bill come through that made, in 32-610, one that made the use of a foreign national license invalid. However, they did not amend 17-930, and a foreign national driver's license needs to be specifically excluded from that code. Number 2, they recommend that Alabama Code 17-11-7 be amended to require absentee ballot affidavit to require the affiant to swear they are a U.S. citizen upon submitting their ballot. I provided you the language for what is required for the affidavit on an absentee ballot. Nowhere on that affidavit must they again swear that they are a U.S. citizen. And the grand jury asked that they correct that the legislature correct that. One of the most important findings or recommendations I believe the grand jury made is that they recommend Alabama law require voter identification in order to register to vote. I think it shocked me that when working this case, I learned that you are not required to show a photo ID when you go to register to vote. It's requested. It is not required. I provided you a copy of the form that is being used. We asked, and the grand jury asked, that they make it a law that you provide some type of photo ID. We have to show a photo ID when we go to vote. We can't vote unless we're exempt under federal law without an identification, a photo identification. And yet we allow people to go and vote or go and register to vote, and they don't have to show a photo ID. That is a huge loophole in our law. They only have to provide a social security number or a driver's license. Foreign nationals can legally obtain a social security number and a driver's license in our state. So we have to correct that. We have to make sure that we require a valid photo ID when you register to vote. They also made the recommendation to the Secretary of State's office that it should ensure all boards of registers receive additional training so that they clearly understand that only U.S. citizens are legally permitted to vote in state and federal elections. And that they ask that the Secretary of State amend voter registration form to add the question, do you currently have a foreign national driver's license? You saw on the registration form, there's no question about whether or not they have a foreign national driver's license. Aaliyah keeps all the documentation. When a person comes to get a foreign national driver's license, they have to provide identification from the country which they are here from, and they keep that on file. And yet, there is nothing on the registration form that asks them to delineate between a driver's license and a foreign national driver's license. They ask that the Secretary of State only approve vendors providing polling pads for elections that would have software to notify a poll worker if a foreign national driver's license was being used as a form of identification. Currently, if someone uses a foreign national driver's license in an attempt to vote at the polling place, the polling pad will merely give you an error. They just couldn't read it. But it also could give you an error if my driver's license has a scratch on the back of it. And when a poll worker gets that error message, all they do is simply override that to allow somebody to vote. The recommendation of the grand jury is that they correct that they ask the vendors to make a screen whereby if a foreign national driver's license is presented, it notifies the poll worker. And let me say now, we appreciate poll workers. This is not a knock at anybody in the system. It's about identifying the loopholes that has allowed foreign nationals to be able to vote in our elections, okay? Poll workers spend 14, 15, 16-hour days at the poll. They're tired. They need assistance when someone attempts to present that foreign national driver's license to say, hey, wait a minute, and allow that person, if necessary, to vote provisional until it's determined. Heck, I've had to vote provisional one time when I moved and I was put on the inactive list. And but it goes to show that nobody's above the law. I wasn't above the law, even though the registrars knew who I was. I voted provisionally, corrected my address, and was back on the active list. So we have to do something to ensure that poll workers understand when a foreign national driver's license is being used. They also ask that we recommend that the law enforcement agency, ALEA, which I've been working with during the course of this investigation, that they communicate, the driver's license system, communicate a person's foreign national status to LETS. Currently, when we began this investigation, and I attempted to look up this individual's driver's license and criminal history, I could not tell whether or not he was a foreign national. The driver's license system whereby somebody has a foreign national license does not talk to the criminal background system. We need to correct that, and ALEA is working to get that done. And finally, as I gave you a copy of, foreign national driver's license numbers, they ask that they be distinguished from a standard driver's license with a letter at the beginning, similar to ID cards. If you have an identification card, your number is I and then the number. Foreign national numbers have nothing different. They're the same as a regular license. The only thing different you see is FN at the top, okay? What this case shows is that our system has vulnerabilities. Right now, a person can lawfully have an Alabama driver's license even if they're not a U.S. citizen. That's not a problem. The problem is there's nothing in our system that's clearly flagging that status when the license is used for voting at the polls. Now, what this case shows, a foreign national was able to obtain a driver's license, a social security number, register to vote, and cast ballots without the system flagging them. And that should not happen in our country. I am thankful to Secretary Allen and his staff, and the staff with Homeland Security and the Alabama Law Enforcement Agency who worked with my office in this investigation. When Secretary of State Allen identified those illegal registrations, we in Blount County did not look away. As district attorney, I did my duty, investigated, presented the evidence to a grand jury who brought charges and made findings and recommendations. It is my sincere hope that our legislature will review these findings and act swiftly to make the recommendations that this grand jury made public. And at this time, I'll take any questions.
Are you able to share where Maloney is a citizen?
He is a Canadian citizen. And we filed a motion to revoke bond in his other 2025 case involving the child sex act materials. We believe he would be a flight risk at this time.
And are those child pornography charges, did those happen here or did those happen?
They happen here in Blount County.
Okay.
But and let's not talk about Mr. Maloney specifically. Let's just talk about law enforcement brings me a case. As district attorney, I have the ability to look up someone's criminal history. I see their driver's license, what vehicles they've ever owned, where they've paid taxes, things of that nature. Nothing tells me as a DA that this person is a foreign national, which is a problem when I've got serious and violent crimes that I may need to know they're a foreign national because they may potentially be a flight risk. The last thing we want is to not understand someone has the ability to leave our country, go to another country quickly and easily and enter, and then we can't prosecute them for a serious crime here. That's one of the recommendations that the grand jury looked at, was making sure that prosecutors and law enforcement know. It would help them when they go to serve warrants or things of that nature if they understood their status of whether or not it potentially could be dangerous or they're a flight risk or someone may run.
Do you know how long he had been in the United States?
He has voted in 9 elections per the indictment, and that will tell you, if you do the math, we've got him back to, I think, 2017, if I remember correctly. Yes, 2017. He was voting back to 2017.
When you said that when you were looking and you couldn't tell through the data that you were looking through, does this also apply for law enforcement officers when they're calling in stuff through NCIC if they pulled someone over? Are they also not able to get that information?
So if the driver's license is not talking to, now they may be able to identify, but we cannot see off of what we currently can access whether or not they are a foreign national. That's scary, to be honest with you. And it's really, and we're hoping with Aaliyah, and I appreciate their general counsel talking with me about this. We are hoping that it's literally making the driver's license system talk to that other system that law enforcement doesn't see the driver's license see it. They see the criminal background, the criminal history, okay? So they can't necessarily tell what they're dealing with on a traffic stop potentially.
So would you say there's a lapse of communication between what's federal, state, and local could be doing and tying that together? So
Yes, I think there's a lot of systems that have a lot of information, and those systems don't talk to each other. And if those systems talk to each other, I mean, you had 186 people that were able to register. And let me say why this is important. Who remembers what the initial Gunnersville mayor election result was? It was tied. It was a tied vote. If you look at the Senate race down in Lee County several years ago, someone won that race by 1 vote. 1 vote matters. And one person voting who shouldn't be voting matters. We can't sit back and say, well, it's just 1 vote. And I hear people say, well, my vote doesn't really matter. It does matter. And that's your voice. And so if you have a tied election and you learn that there was someone who should not have been voting who voted, then we put the people who were supposed to elect had actually elected someone. But that vote was discounted because of someone voting illegally.
Do you think this investigation by the Secretary of State and then your subsequent investigation, do you think this is only scratching the surface, and do you think there could be more potential non-U.S. citizens voting in Alabama's election?
So Secretary of State has been working with Homeland Security and other departments to be able to identify those people on the voting rolls that are not citizens. I hope that is all we have, but I will tell you, I learned a lot. And I've been an elected official since 2010 and been involved in the elections process. And I was dumbfounded at times. I don't think this is rhetoric. I don't think voting, and there's a difference between auditing our elections, like did we count the numbers right, did we whatever. If we don't ensure who's supposed to be voting is voting and not voting, we got a bigger problem than the back end. We got a front end problem in addition to a back end problem. And I really think there are just a few simple steps that could help. And look, no one's perfect. I appreciate our Blount County Boards of Register. I appreciate our probate judge, all of our elections officials in this county who worked with me to help us identify and locate documents from these prior elections to be able to substantiate the charges that were brought.
On a level that we haven't quite discussed, we're kind of on the edge of it. When it comes to situations like this, the legal burden, is that placed more on the local, with your district, or is it more of the state burden, or does the federal get involved in that situation because of what we're dealing with here?
You know, I think it's a mix, and the thing about this is, so for example, this hit my email box. We got the referral in email, and I thought, oh, I wonder who this person is, and I saw the name, and I thought, oh, I recognize that name. And so, sadly, a lot of our DAs are underfunded, understaffed, and they may not necessarily be able to have the resources, or local law enforcement have the resources to actually investigate this. This was a lot easier for me because I already had a lot of the information in this case, all right? And then began digging and identifying documents, and again, the local officials helping me go and find documents, okay? So, yes, it's, you know, the Secretary of State's office doesn't have the authority to investigate. All they can do is refer that to us. You're going to refer it to a DA's office. Now, I know that there were a lot of DA's offices that these were referred to, that they were outside the statute of limitations. Okay, so just because your county county's name might have been on it, doesn't mean your DA isn't doing their work. It means that they may have determined that it was outside the statute of limitations. They don't have the ability to prove it based on finding documents and other things. But it does add an extra burden to law enforcement and to our office. And I do want to thank the Blount County Sheriff's Office deputies last night who made that arrest. And I don't want to not thank them for their work on that, because they went out and stayed out for several hours to make the arrest.
As far as the rest of this goes, in seeing that there is that burden placed on a lot of different district attorneys because of financial and or other resource or lack of resources, is that something that the state administration needs to kind of come in and
Oh, we would always love to have more funding.
Okay. And the other question is, at some point, without any particulars, do you guys ever get AI involved in some of this to be able to crack some of these cases that would?
No, I don't use AI in my office for any type of criminal prosecution or things of that nature. You know, law enforcement is overworked, understaffed, and underpaid, period. And what we're seeing is another, you know, dump. I hate to say dump, but here's something else for you to do, while we also need you to do these other 8 things that we're not going to provide you funding for the person to be able to do these 800 reports that we need you to turn in. And look, that's a burden we take as elected officials. I get it. Like, I am a 24/7. I don't leave the office at 5 o'clock and turn back in at 8. I know that all the DAs in the state do their job, do it to the best of their ability. And we've all talked about a lot of these cases. You know, we've kind of discussed amongst ourselves, statute of limitations run. Because, you know, they pulled from way back. I mean, I know that some even got some that they had voted in 2014. So I do think there are small steps that can be taken. Correcting that one statute to amend it so it's consistent with the law from last year. Adding whether or not you're a U.S. citizen to the absentee affidavit. I mean, it's literally a line. Also, I mean, I guess what bothered me the most is the photo ID, that I can go and register, and as long as I you can do it online, as long as you enter a valid license number in, or a valid Social Security number, who knows who's actually doing it, okay? And that's why probably in the past, you know, we potentially could have seen people deceased if those systems didn't talk to each other. I think, you know, Secretary Allen's doing a better job requiring at least a driver's license number or a Social Security number. But if you look on the form, it says ID requested, okay? It does not say required. And yet when I go to vote, I better find my driver's license or my something before I go in, because they're not going to give me a ballot unless I show them I am who I say I am. And should we not require people who register to show I am who I say I am, and I have a right, because our right, voting is a right. I have a right to vote in this country.
I don't know if you're able to answer this, but you mentioned that it's very hard on the Alabama driver's license to see if it's a foreign national driver's license issued. Is it kind of that same way in other states?
So it's not necessarily hard to see it on the actual license. At the top of the license, I gave y'all a sample that I took out. You see FN driver's license, okay? And so if you know what that means, and if we can train our poll workers and our registrars and our officials to know that, that was something that was new to me, but when I go and look on the electronic side of it that law enforcement sees, there is nothing that tells me foreign national.
So when you prosecuted him previously for the child pornography, you had no idea?
No, we filed saying that he was a potential flight risk and asked for no bond originally because he was a Canadian citizen. That's why when this hit my desk, I was like, wait a minute, I know that name, and went and pulled my old file, and we had the information in that file, which is a public record. We filed on that about his Canadian documents.
And was he here on a visa, or how was he here in the United States?
I was told by Homeland Security he's legally here. He is not a U.S. citizen. And there's a difference. So a foreign national can be legally in the United States. They're just not a United States citizen.
So would it behoove the state of Alabama to more or less specify when they suspect someone is a foreign national, foreign driver, or foreign national driver's license, that then on that form for them, they have to, not request, but required. U.S. citizens, I don't have to show you my license. I don't have to, even if you pull me over, I'm not required by anything under the Constitution.
I'm not going to get into
I'm just saying that, but it comes down to the fact that it would be good for the state of Alabama to be able to say, we'd like to require this if you're suspected of being a foreign national.
Well, it's not so much required. If you want to get a driver's license in the state of Alabama and you're a foreign national, you take your paperwork down to the driver's license office. They scan all of it. You do what you need to do just to get a driver's license like I would, okay? The problem is the driver's license system is not talking to the system that the law enforcement officers see on the street to send that information over. You know how we could do it easily? Again, when I'm looking somebody up on my LET system, if I see I in front of their driver's license number, I know, or their identification, it's an identification card. I means identification card, not driver's license, okay? If we had F or K, or I don't care what letter you pick as long as it ain't I, that would tell me, and it would tell law enforcement on the road that this is a foreign national, without even having to see the top part of it. Because let's say this, I get pulled over, I'm a foreign national, I don't have my driver's license with me, but I have a driver's license number. I have a social security card, social security number. I give that to you. I go back and I run your information, your identifiers on LETs. I am not going to know that you're a foreign national if you do not have the paper card, or not the paper, because it's plastic, the plastic card to provide.
So Alabama, basically, they need to update their system and how they're talking to one another.
Well, I would love to see that. I think the grand jury recommended that. Look, Alabama's a great state to live, to work, to raise our children. I want to hope that we fix this so that the people who put themselves out there to run, like the mayors, and it's, I mean, look, one vote usually doesn't make a difference in a big statewide race. I can't tell you if I've ever seen a statewide race be a one-vote race. But you can identify local races that it's a tie or a one vote, and that's where it matters. And a lot more people show up to vote in local elections and care more about local elections. Who's going to be their child superintendent? Who's going to be their road commissioner? Who's going to be their sheriff? Then at the end of the day, cares who's going to be the auditor or be the, I'm not saying they don't care, okay? I'm just saying people care, and that's where you see that one vote matter. And I think these are simple changes. Again, I appreciate Secretary Allen. I wouldn't have had that information if he hadn't sent it to us, which led us down, it leads you down a rabbit hole. Just to be quite, you start going, well, wait a minute, I didn't realize that. And so, look, I hope everybody gets out and votes. It's our right. Again, it is a right. And that is a right for a U.S. citizen. I appreciate y'all being here today. Any more questions?
Would you be able to share when those child pornography charges, what year those happened?
The grand jury returned the indictment in 2025.
Okay.
All right. Thank you guys so much.